Welcome people, I'm Double Six. This is my channel where I help boys and men to become more deadly and more dangerous. Firstly, let me tell you, if you take the blue pill and you're unwilling to unplug, no one can help you. But if you're willing to unplug and swallow that red pill, you can truly be deadly and dangerous and no one can stop you. That's what I'm here to help you with on this channel. Today, the value I'm gonna give you is talking to you about toxic masculinity. I'm gonna review a video by Campus Review, and these people are from America and they've got their YouTube channel and they've done a little Q&A answer session, and I'm gonna review this video, so hold tight. When these weak men come up against me in society, I eat them for breakfast. He needs to address his haircut, man. That's why we're men. That's what we do. We're meant to be physically dominant. God has made us larger for the most part. What's wrong with the traditional man? Traditional man built the world that we live in here today. Why are women trying to get into our business and say, oh, no, no. Let me ask, did this woman deliberately go out there and pick a bunch of beta simps on the campus? People have to understand that men are in an identity crisis right now. Yes, people, let's get into this. They're talking to people about toxic masculinity, and I'm gonna see what these people have to say. So let's get into this quick and double fast, yeah?
I'm Emma Michelle with Campus Reform. This week, Gillette released an ad taking on the subject of toxic masculinity. What exactly does that mean? Well, we are here at Georgetown University today asking students what they think about the issue. Do you think that toxic masculinity is a problem that we need to address in society?
In society, I'd say it definitely is something we should address.
It's definitely an issue that...
Hold on a minute. Why is this man talking about toxic masculinity as something that we definitely need to address? He needs to address his haircut, man.
Most of us face in some way or another.
I'm actually a women and gender studies minor, so we talk a lot about toxic masculinity in some of my classes.
Hold on a minute now. Why is that woman, she's a woman in general studies minor, why would they talk about toxic masculinity so much in a female class, in a woman in general studies? Like, toxic masculinity should be an issue for men to deal with because it's about men trying to put alpha traits on other men, like man up, like don't cry, like if you hurt yourself, don't show no emotion. So toxic masculinity should be discussed in men's studies. Like, why is it being discussed in women's studies?
I definitely think it is an issue at large.
I've absolutely heard of toxic masculinity, and I do think it's an issue.
I think it's a huge issue that should be addressed.
It's a real problem, especially...
Beta alert! So that guy thinks that toxic masculinity is a huge problem and it should be addressed. Beta alert, yeah? Beta alert.
For high school girls, as they start to try and break into the workforce, and there's people just kind of breaking them down, saying that it's not good enough because it's usually males.
Focusing on it would be worthwhile here for sure.
I think we need more ads like this because it brings attention to this very serious topic.
People have become more sensitive.
Hold on a minute, yeah? Why are all these university men talking about toxic masculinity as such a huge problem? Is this what they're pushing out of the academics? Like these weak beta males that think that masculinity is actually a problem and becoming toxic. Like, this is what the institutions are pushing out there. Now, I hate to just interrupt the video so early, but what you have to understand is when these weak men come up against me in society, I eat them for breakfast. Believe me, I eat those weak beta males for breakfast because they don't want to deal with masculinity. And when you come up against masculinity, it will always beat the beta energy. Alpha will always beat beta out here in the real world.
To it nowadays.
How would you define toxic masculinity as a term in your own words?
Toxic masculinity, I would define as...
So hold on. So she asked the woman how she would define toxic masculinity. She was stumped for words. So let me see if this man who can barely get himself a proper haircut or a proper trim, if he can describe toxic masculinity. Something tells me that I bet you that he can.
There isn't a sort of logic to it. I feel like it's more just strutting your stuff and being manly beyond there being a point to be.
I don't really know.
Hold on a minute. So he thinks that toxic masculinity is being manly beyond the point that you have to be. So we got to look into the numbers now and saying who is deciding the threshold for manliness, because it should be men. It should be the alpha men that decide the threshold for the point of no return, the point of uselessness with your manliness. Now I agree, like once masculinity gets to the point where you become uncontrollably violent, men who deal with war and hurting the vulnerable, I think that any masculine energy that brings you to extreme violence or any violence is where masculinity has gone too far. I think that's the threshold, and we should as men decide the threshold for masculinity. We shouldn't have no beta energy males from academic studies groups and universities deciding where the line is drawn with masculinity. No, I don't think so.
The idea that men have to be a certain way, you know, dominant, physically imposing and all, and to the extent where
and these
Hold on a minute, men do have to be physically dominant. That's why we're men. That's what we do. We're meant to be physically dominant. God has made us larger for the most part than most women because we're protectors. We protect the vulnerable. We protect the weak. We're the providers. So we should be physically more dominant. That's what masculine energy is. That's what testosterone does. When you take testosterone and you put it in your body, it makes you physically more dominant. And that is what the Lord has given us. That's the chemicals that are put into our bodies when we're born to be more physical, to be more dominant, to be masculine, to be more aggressive. That doesn't mean violent, but masculine energy is aggressive, and that aggression gets us results.
Constructs are not necessarily conducive to building strong relationships between different members of communities.
Toxic masculinity can be like really anything, anything that like puts men over females.
I guess maybe I would.
Hold on. Toxic masculinity is not anything that puts men over females. These people don't really know what toxic masculinity is. Toxic masculinity is meant to be toxic for men against men. It's not putting men against females. And the radical feminist movement is pushing all of these kind of different versions, these flim-flam, wishy-washy versions of toxic masculinity, and I'm not having it.
I would say just guys being expected to behave a certain way.
Ooh, that's a tough question. I would say maybe the persistent reinforcement that like being a man means a certain thing.
I guess just kind of the societal ideas of what it means to be masculine has kind of it's kind of become something so large that it's become very toxic.
The idea that you have to conform to traditional notions of what it means to be a man.
If you had to draw the lines,
yes, we do have to conform to traditional notions of being a man. I think that's a good point. What's wrong with the traditional man? Traditional man built the world that we live in here today. Is anybody complaining? The traditional man dug all of the tunnels. The traditional man built the bridges, dug through mountains to create train lines, laid train lines, train tracks, built aeroplanes, discovered how to fly. Like, what is wrong with the traditional man? Why all of a sudden is being like the traditional man toxic? But I'll tell you, the radical feminist movement are pushing their notion of female supremacy to dominate male emotions in society. Definitely, they are pushing the notion.
If you had to draw the line somewhere between what's toxic masculinity and what's just normal masculinity, how would you do that?
Like, I don't know, like, I think it's a very gray line, like, not one you would be able to easily distinguish.
Wow, that's a hard question.
If someone is, you know, feels like they can't cry or feels like they can't be open and emotional.
Where do you think the line has?
Why do people want to keep beating men down when we talk about man up? When we use the phrase, don't cry. Like, why can't people just mind their own business? Like, we don't get into woman's business. Why are women trying to get into our business and say, oh, no, you know, you don't know how to deal with males and boys. You got to allow them to cry. You got to allow them to show their emotions. Like, when my son hits, when he falls over and mashes up himself, I tell him, don't cry. Be a man. Wipe those tears off your eyes. I'm not interested in those tears. That is men raising men. We know best how to raise ourselves. We know best what to do with ourselves. People need to stop getting into man's business and telling men how to raise other men. If we tell another man, man up. If we tell another man, don't cry. We're the best people to know how to raise other men. It's not for women now to step in and the radical feminist movement to try and dominate masculine energy and overpower masculine energy and basically suppress masculine energy in society by telling men how we should govern and treat other men. It's just not on, and we're not interested.
Drawn between toxic masculinity and just regular male behavior.
That's a tough one.
I'd say when it goes against probably what people might say about you is the main drive and you acting that sort of way. I feel like that is probably when toxic masculinity comes into play.
Maybe.
Let me ask, like, did this woman deliberately go out there and pick a bunch of beta simps on the campus? Like, because women know how to identify alpha males. Like, they know us, they see us. Like, when you see me walking down the road, if you can't see me, you can see the sparks from the sword, from my sword dragging on the floor. You can hear that ding, 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 the sound of the metal of my sword dragging on the floor. So you know I'm alpha. You know if you want to come up to me and talk to me about anything, I'll give you the right answers when it comes to men. But what has this woman done? She searched the campus for the most beta man them that she can find. It looks a bit biased in her selection of candidate to me.
You draw the line at a place where somebody feels that just because of masculine norms they have to act a certain way and they're uncomfortable with that.
Once it becomes psychologically or mentally damaging to the individual, you know, once they feel so under pressure that, you know, their mental health gets disturbed or something like that, then I think that's where the line might be drawn.
I'm Emma Michelle with Campus Reform.
Thank you very much. I think that the candidate selection was a little bit biased. I want you to tell me in the comment section below what you think toxic masculinity is. I want you to tell me in the comment section below if women should just mind their own business and let men govern men and let men raise boys into men. I think women should just mind their own business and just let us do our thing. People have to understand that men are in an identity crisis right now. Feminism has become a quest to overtake masculinity and be the dominant emotion in society. Look at the evidence. Boys are falling behind in school. Girls are doing better than boys. Like, when it comes to my son, I have to say, like, he's not the best person academically, but he's really good with his hands, he's really good with his brain, he's a good thinker and he thinks under pressure and he solves problems. But school is not really designed for him. School is not really designed for the fact that in the real world we work in groups and we don't really work alone. But school makes you work alone. It makes you sit on your desk alone. It makes you study alone. It makes you revise alone. It makes you do homework alone. It makes you take exams alone. But in the real world, if you're in your workplace, you've got a team of people. You've got a team of forklift drivers. You've got a team of builders. You've got a team of plumbers. You've got a plumber's mate. You've got a plumber's supervisor. You've got teams of people. So it's like the school system with the feminist energy tries to separate boys and compartmentalize them and keep them away from the group, because the group is where we excel. The group is where we survive and thrive. We solve problems. We win as a team, as a football team, a training team. In life, you very, very rarely work on your own in anything. All I have to say is identity politics is on the march and men's identity is in crisis. I'm Double Six. I'm here to help boys and men become more deadly and more dangerous, and I think that I'm going to start talking more and more about the radical feminist movement and focusing on how to get these people out of man's business. Catch me on the next one. Little more.